Good evening and welcome back. So, Trump is doing his re-election campaign, traveling around America, and of course trying to shine a spotlight on his successes and the Democrats' failures. So, of course, he's visited Kenosha from the shooting of a criminal after the police had been called out to yet another criminal incident, or reported, alleged criminal incident. And after trying to restrain the criminal, after he'd stated that he had a weapon, after they tasered the criminal, and then he went to retrieve his weapon, he then got shot before he could hurt any of the officers. That guy, also known as Jacob Blake. Of course, there were riots following that because, don't you know, you can't hurt criminals if they're black. I mean, you can't hurt people if they're black. Unless they're black police officers. In which case, yes, okay, you can kill them. So it's basically, don't hurt black criminals. But also, if white criminals have the correct political opinions, then it's bad to hurt them as well. Just like if you're somebody with the wrong political opinions, it's not acceptable to defend yourself. As we saw, of course, with David Dorn and then with Kyle Rittenhouse. Thankfully, the latter survived, and unfortunately, the former didn't. So, on the heels of that, the riots coming out, trying to burn the city to the ground, trying to destroy the businesses, and the only defense that they have is to say, well, the insurance covers it. And you might be thinking, well, what if they don't have insurance? Or secondly, you do realise then by causing this much mayhem, the insurance premiums are going to go up, which means you're affecting all the business owners in that area who now have to pay more for insurance because of your ignorant actions. Are you aware of that? I mean, of course not, because you can't be a leftist if you have just the smallest understandings of economics. But hey, here's hoping. So of course he's coming after the National Guard have been sent in to say, well, hey, thankfully we're actually able to try and restore order to the area. Maybe if we could do the same in Portland, that'd be okay. That's the idea here, to try to say if they've had riots and legal protests for dozens and dozens and dozens of nights, lasting months, whereas we were able to nip it in the bud with Kenosha because of the National Guard, then maybe there'd be a difference there. Maybe you should look at the crime in Democrat areas compared to Republican areas. That is the idea that Donald Trump is trying to put across here. But, BBC article, and this is a prime example of why I use the BBC to report these things, because it is fantastic. Just the visceral hatred they have of Donald Trump. And therefore, they will try and mislead as much as they can, all the time. So, let's kick it off. Mr. Trump claimed, without evidence, that Kenosha would have been burned to the ground by protesters were it not for the National Guard. So, without evidence, look at Portland. Protesters, you mean rioters. I can guarantee you he wasn't talking about protesters. So, you're kind of lying there. Unless you're saying protesters and rioters are the same. But you're not, are you? In which case, he wasn't talking about protesters. But good luck, BBC, you nearly made it through one sentence without lying. So close. The Wisconsin city saw days of violence after Jacob Blake, a black man, was shot in the back by police. That's just a lie by omission. Thankfully, I've already given you the context so you know what to be ready for. Mr. Trump is visiting the city despite appeals from the mayor and governor. Well, of course they don't want him to show them up. Of course not. It's like, hey, we failed and we needed the president from the opposing political party to bail us out. And he wants to come visit. It's like, shit, no, don't let him in. This is going to be a shit show for us. So, fair enough. The president is pushing a strong law and order message ahead of November's election. As is now necessary. I mean, he's found the weak spot for the Democrats who are trying to say defund the police and letting out prisoners and letting out paedophiles near a school. Good job again. The Democrats keep shooting themselves in the foot. It's like, how many accidents do you need before you go, maybe we should recalibrate our tactics here, guys. I think it's just an echo chamber getting out of control. So he said, I think a lot of people are looking at what's happening to these Democratic-run cities and they're disgusted, Mr. Trump said before boarding Air Force One to fly to Wisconsin. They can see what's going on and they can't believe what's taking place in our country. I can't believe it either. That's very true. Although I think a lot of people aren't aware of what's happening because they're not actually hearing the truth. They're hearing MSN, BS, or CNN's lies. Either way. Although Mr. Trump, and this is perfect. This is why I picked this article, just for this, which might seem acceptable at first glance, then you realize what they mean. Although Mr. Trump claimed he sent the National Guard into Kenosha, they were actually deployed by Wisconsin's governor and supported by 200 federal law enforcement officials ordered in by the president. So you might think, fair enough, they're calling him out. Until you realize how the National Guard deployment works, and the difference between federal level and state level, which maybe the BBC are hoping British viewers don't understand. So, he claimed he sent in the National Guard, but they were deployed by Wisconsin's governor. Yep. So, what he's got to do, as president, is to say, it looks like you guys need a National Guard. We should probably send them in. But, by law, I can't send them in to a state until you guys grant me permission to do so. Ordinarily, you would say, hey, Mr. President, we're having trouble. Please help us out. And then we'd accept your request. But in this instance, I'm being proactive and preemptive and saying, I think you're having trouble there. How about I help you guys out? Either way, he still needs consent and permission from the state, from the governor, from wherever he's trying to send them into, to then say, yeah, come on in. That's what he needed. So, when they say they were actually deployed by Wisconsin's governor, well, yes. Yes, of course they were. But they couldn't have them if Trump didn't send them in. So, really misleading there. Plus, you might be thinking, well, why are we seeing a load of gaslighting then from the Democrats saying, no, Trump, we don't want your help whatsoever. And then we're trying to work with whoever we can, even across the aisle, just so that Trump will help us out. Why is there that gaslighting going on there? Well, if they're clear by saying, no, we do not accept your help, that is our statement, that is our legal statement, then if Trump does try to force his way in with the National Guard, or military intervention, if it gets that bad, then he's breaking the law, and they're going to try and file legal proceedings against him for breaking that law. Ordinarily, he wouldn't fall for it, and I don't think he will anyway. But they're then trying to get him to do that by them publicly saying, oh, we're trying to work across the aisle and work with him so that we can find a way that he can help us out and we can get to the bottom of this and help everybody, but he's being really difficult and isn't trying to help us. In order to try and lie about him, to smear him, to make him look bad, at the same time as then trying to get him to protect his ego and his status and his character by then ignoring the law and actually sending in the help that they're publicly calling for, but privately and officially saying they don't want. That's why that gaslighting is going on there. So moving on, he cited reports the protesters had tried to break into the house of Kenosha's Democratic mayor, John Antaramian. Not the first time reading, but it's the first time saying. I saw last night with these radical anarchists. They're not anarchists, they're communists. Very different. Are trying to get into the mayor's house, and lots of bad things were happening to this poor, foolish, very stupid mayor. I mean, how he can be mayor, I have no idea. They had tremendous numbers of people really harassing him horribly, and I guess trying to break into his house, and he still sticks up for them because he's a fool. Only a fool would stick up for them like that. The claim of the break-in attempt is unconfirmed. Who needs to confirm it for you then, BBC? Who needs to do it? Because your report on hoaxes is fact. So maybe maybe you should recalibrate that. But why didn't they point him out saying that they're radical anarchists when they're not? They're communists. Come on, BBC. Why aren't you fact-checking him there and explaining how communism is evil and Socialism, the stepping stone to communism, is evil. And that's who these people are. Relying on Marxist agendas. You should be calling this out. Fact check him, BBC. Don't let them say that they're anarchists when you know full well that they're communists and communist light, also known as socialists, because they proudly portray their understandings, I use the term loosely, of Karl Marx. They're Marxists. Why don't you put this forward, BBC? Don't let them smear anarchists. What have they done wrong? It's the socialists and the communists. I think we know why. Oh, it's you've got to laugh at it. Otherwise, you're going to get enraged. So you've got to laugh at it. Mr. Trump said he was visiting the city for law enforcement and for the National Guard. They'd done a great job in Kenosha. They put out the flame immediately. Pretty much, yeah. In Kenosha, the president is meeting police officers, but not the Blake family. He said previously it was because relatives had wanted lawyers present. Yep, and we'll ignore their analysis because who gives a shit. But the family, of course, as in his father, who was actually there. Very good. Earlier in an interview with CNN, his father, Jacob Blake Sr., said his son's life was more important than a meeting with President Trump. Fair enough, yeah. I'm not getting into politics. It's all about my son, man. It has nothing to do with a photo op, he said. So, the fact that Jacob Blake is now a multi-millionaire from donations to a criminal, do you think that might have something to do with it? Do you think then if we said, well, cool, we will take that away because Mr. Trump said his administration would provide nearly $4 million to help Kenosha businesses that have been damaged in the riots. They mentioned the riots. And $1 million for city law enforcement. Is okay then if we just send it over to them because it's not about the politics. No. So if we actually send it down to the businesses that have been damaged in response to this, is that then acceptable? Because we don't want, we don't want anyone to be able to smear your name and say that you're doing it for the politics and for the photo op, and then it's not about your son. So how about we don't give the criminal multiple millions of dollars, and instead we send that to the businesses that have been damaged because of the politics, so that we can keep the politics out of this. Is that a good agreement, Jacob Blake Sr.? No? Oh. Okay. Oh. Might you have any idea why the police were called on this man after having criminal charges against him and a warrant out for his arrest? Could it be anything to do with the parenting or lack thereof? Do you think? Do you think maybe you didn't do such a good job as you could have done and there's a bit of self-reflection for you? No? Right. So you raised a criminal who tried to attack police, successfully attacked police, tried to attack police again, and got shot for it this time around, has received millions of dollars for it. And you're just going, yep, perfectly fine to me. I think your priorities are a bit askew there, mate. And I also don't think you quite understand the point of the mask. But good job. And that's a great photo op as well from the BBC. Well, okay, using Reuters, fine. But just going with, yes, there's this guy with his mask down, clearly shouting with his mouth wide open. Good job. And just to finish up with the line that the BBC finishes with, this is just basically an attack on the BBC now because it is ridiculous and you've got to laugh at it. Jacob Blake, 29. That's all about Jacob Blake. No history of him needed whatsoever. Why were the police there? Doesn't matter. Was he called... Well, were the police called from somebody who was being assaulted by him at the time, sexually assaulted her, and using that to claim that he could smell the fact that she'd been sleeping around? Could it have something to do with that? And there was a warrant out for his arrest, and he's assaulted police officers before? Anything like that? No? Okay, no. Jacob Blake, 29. That's all you need to know. Was shot several times in the back by a police officer during an arrest. Okay. No greater context needed of escaping from police restraints, stating he was going to get a weapon and being tasered and then going to get that weapon. But as Mr. Blake tried to get into a car where his 3 children were seated. I think it's safe to say he wasn't trying to get into the car. He was reaching into the car. So we've got several lies by omission, but then just to finish it off, we got a blatant lie in the first sentence and a blatant lie in the last. And lies all throughout. So good job, BBC. Who fact checks the fact checkers? I guess I found my calling. But as always, let me know what you guys think down below of this utter shit show of an article. And let's just hope nobody actually believes what they read from the BBC. Because this is getting ridiculous. And I do point it out what's happening in the US because, of course, then we've got to be concerned about how they report on things over here as well. And that the Conservatives in the UK don't seem to be even as conservative as the Republicans in America. And Trump is hardly conservative, really. But nonetheless, that's what we have over here. So if he can sway enough people over there, then maybe that'll ripple across the pond over here. Already decent friends with Farage, of course. But, as always, until next time, have a good one.